Hello everybody, welcome to GRAYBELLSEEBAN podcast, episode 1. Today's podcast is about social reforms. How do advancements in social reforms help or hurt society and people's outlooks? I'm Ryan, and I'm joined today by my colleagues.
Hello.
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 I'm Campbell.
I'm Grayson.
I'm Hasib.
How are you all doing?
Pretty great.
All right.
Alright, so the central theme of today's podcast are friendship, honesty, peace, and love. Hasib, you have the floor.
Well, I got a quote from this amazing TED Talk. Who the speaker was James White, and the TED Talk was called "The Little Problem I Had Renting a House."
Fantastic podcast.
The quote goes, "We can't make people rent to folks that they don't want to rent to. And besides, we have a great relationship with people in the community, and we really don't want to damage that." So, in our current society, does it seem like people giving business to people of other race or gender, does that affect their business in a bad way?
Do you mind giving us a summary of what the TED Talk is about in case the listeners aren't familiar with it? Yes.
Well, the TED Talk is James White moves to a military base far away from his actual home, and he wants to rent a house. But the problem he finds, though, is that no one wants to sell to him because he's African American, which is very sad, but he goes through months of trying to look for a house, and he finally gets one house. It's really bad. And it's a trailer park, and it's far away, but he finally gets one. So, we can see through that there is deep racism in society then, but does that translate over to society now?
That's not even deep racism, that is blatant on the surface. That's ridiculous. What year did this happen in?
Yeah, when was this?
It was sometime in the 90s. He doesn't ever explicitly say the date, but it is sometime in the 90s.
Which isn't even that far, isn't even that long ago. That's so surprising that it's that blatant amount of racism that wasn't even 20 years ago.
I'm still not sure how people can get away with this, especially so recently. It just blows my mind.
Yeah,
honestly.
And it's unfortunately, even today, we still see a lot of examples of instances where people are just blatantly denied, civil rights simply because of their race, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
And a lot of times, it's not even the people who are being racist were just raised that way, so they weren't taught any different, and their opinions of racism and how they hate a certain group are just because of how they were raised and what they were taught as a given.
Yeah, it honestly blows my mind because it's very healthy for us to think of this from other people's perspectives, but if you think of this from the people selling houses' perspectives, I just can't gain any ground on possibly thinking what their mindset is. No, he can't have this house just because he's lesser than me.
Even if he's gonna pay the full price, they're giving up they're giving up a good deal they could have gotten just because of an opinion about the person, which even once they sell them the house, it's over. They don't have to make any contact, which it's just silly.
Yeah, it's their opinion is so strong about this that they're willing to put themselves in a potentially financial disability simply because they don't want to sell this person the house.
And it's even more recently, there's still issues. It's not exactly the same kind, but I know in Baltimore recently there was trouble, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. What happened there, Campbell?
There was a whole problem because of, I forget exactly what it was. I didn't read the article. I think you did.
Mm-hmm.
But then you.
I was trying to toss off the mic, but what happened is recently, because of race issues, there's been quite a few riots in Baltimore, and it's interesting how a young African-American man was taken into custody and died after being apprehended. So many people are calling out for murder. I'm not sure if more recent light has shed anything onto it, but it definitely seems like a race issue to me. Grayson?
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, we could say if it was a white boy who was taken into custody and died after, things might have been different. but people might say that he wouldn't have died after because he was white. They would have taken better care of him. So I mean, it's honestly we can't really go back in time and trade out and see what would happen, but.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case because there's descriptions of what the police officers are doing to people in Baltimore. Like, there was a old woman, I believe, that was apprehended, and even after being detained, her shoulder was broken. So these police have people in custody and are still injuring them, hurting them, killing them, and it's ridiculous. I can't believe that it's still a thing that happens.
And I remember that part of it. The most ridiculous part about it was the woman that was arrested and even after she was handcuffed had her shoulder broken was simply trying to help her, I believe it was grandson, who had been shot. Like, she was sitting on her front porch and her grandson had run up to her house and was simply trying to get help, and police officers came after him and handcuffed her and then broke her shoulder, even though she had done absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah.
So the just want to let you know, the kid who was he wasn't really a kid, but still, he was 25 years old. His name was Freddie Gray, and he sustained injuries to his neck and spine while he was being moved in a police vehicle. So that's what happened.
Yeah,
so,
and we can see
then
like
he died. Yeah.
Yeah, we can see like recently a lot of things are popping up, like George Zimmerman, Ferguson. Like this isn't this isn't like a couple people. This is happening a lot,
frequent.
and it's happening more and more.
This article stood out to me, though, because these descriptions were so brutal. The author, Connors Friedersdorf, he purposely put this in shocking detail so that people could understand it, you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what really got me, the recentness and how shocking it is.
Yeah. Also, recent, like, something that, like, that mimics what happened to James White is how, like, people of a homosexual orientation, people of like different genders and stuff, are being denied services just because of their orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even not just homosexuals, but like women don't even have, which it's not that big of an issue as much as other races, but women are getting treated poorly. They're not getting the same job offers as men do, and they're not getting the same amount of pay.
Some might argue that is just as big of a problem.
Yeah,
because
it's a very big issue.
Because it's half the population.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's like, actually over half, because women are 52% and men are 48% of the world's population.
Mind blowing.
I think
just boggling.
Yeah. Speaking of women, I have an article by Emily Shire saying it's called "You Don't Hate Feminism, You Just Don't Understand It."
Love that article.
Yeah.
Great article.
She just talks about how, like, even I could find myself when someone says feminism, it has a lot of bad luggage to it.
Yeah, like negative connotation.
Negative. Yeah. When you're like, oh, they're just being silly, but
just messing around.
Yeah, but she just explains how most feminists aren't like that. They're not the ones who won't accept guys who are trying to hold the door open for them. They won't walk in a door that's being held by a guy, and they're all just trying to get equal pay for women and equal rights.
Yes. This is something that I've been dying to talk about because feminism is a fantastic thing, and recently the face of it has been slandered by these misogynists. And so these are the people that are trying to impose a curfew on men. Like, those are the bad people that you want to stay away from.
Yeah,
where feminism is a beautiful thing that actually needs ground, but these people ruining it are making it almost like a joke to some people. Because if you're not familiar with the feminist movement, then, like, you're going to be thrown off by these misogynists, you know?
Yeah, like, there's a difference between, like, feminism and, like,
misandry.
Yeah, man haters. Like, feminism is going for, like, equal rights for everyone, while, like, they're being, like, hurt by these people who, like that, like, men are starting to get an image, like, they think they're man haters, which is not true.
Yeah.
Feminists are completely different. Grayson?
In her article, in Emily Shire's article, she talks about the Women Against Feminism organization, and they hold signs that say I don't need feminism because I believe that men and women are equal, not that women should belittle men, which is the opposite of what men and women are trying to do. They're not. The women in feminist groups are not trying to belittle men and make themselves higher than men. They're just trying to get equal representation and equal pay.
Absolutely. It's definitely a worthwhile cause.
Yeah.
And from the surface, it looks bad, but it just takes this kind of love and respect to look into it beyond the shallow surface that people are putting onto it and see the heart of the cause, which is beautiful and extremely important.
Yeah, John Halpin and Marta Cook, in their article "Progressive Tradition, Social Movements, and Progressivism," says injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah.
So these little infractions on people's civil rights and what they want to do is a threat to all of us. Really, it's hurting society in general.
Yeah, I read that article too, and I loved what they said. They said that people should not have to wait for change. They should be able to make the change for themselves, which I think is something that's very overlooked in today's society, because a lot of people think that, hey, if these people want to make a change, they should just go and do it. But there's a lot of aspects to it that keep them from being able to make the changes that they want. So
making a change on yourself is great, because feminism is basically one gender suppressing over the other, where in other news, abortion is a topic of women just trying to gain control of their own bodies. I know, Grayson, you had an article on that, I believe.
Yes. I actually have two. One is pro-life and one is pro-choice. And the pro-life one is by Thomas L. Friedman. And he's pro-life because he's saying he is against abortion because even in cases where the life of the mother is in danger, because with modern technology and science, you can't find one instance in which a woman would not survive without an abortion. So with modern technology, he's saying there's not one instance where the women would die if they did not have an abortion. So most women are choosing to abort because of their child might have a mental disability that would make them not want to have the child, and it would make their lives harder. And at first I thought that's kind of selfish about them to focus on their own life and not the child's life, because the child would still have a life, until I read Megan Padilla's story called Pro-Choice as an Act of Love, where she explains her deal with abortion and how her son would have a disability, and that's why she wanted to get an abortion, because his life would be ruined by that disability if she did not get an abortion. His life would be horrible, where he'd have to make frequent hospital trips and surgeries, and he might not even live a long life at all.
That's
and so
interesting.
that's why she would get an abortion. So it's not just selfish.
Forcing people to live a life that isn't worth living, personally, I believe, is just ferocious.
Yeah.
It falls under the same category as euthanasia is the word. With people being denied the right to end their own life.
Because they're suffering.
Yes, the suffering beyond imagine that they're being forced to live through is absolutely horrendous.
And it's the most frustrating part about that whole issue is the people that oppose it are the people that have no idea what they're going through and couldn't possibly know the amount of pain or suffering that they're going through. So they have absolutely no right to just deny them that.
Sometimes these families can't afford to take care of these children or give them the medical attention that they need. Yeah. So these kids tend to be sicker than they more than they should, or they can't get the procedures they need. Yeah, faster than they would have before.
Absolutely.
There's just so many circumstances to it that people don't take into account or think about.
Exactly. So people opposing it will think of this one instance where they might have not been suffering a lot and they just wanted to end their life because things were tough for euthanization, but in reality, most cases people are suffering a ton.
Yeah, it's not everything is exactly the same, which is what a lot of people don't seem to understand.
Yeah.
So this thought is only coming to me now if we're switching the topic back to racism.
Oh yeah.
What the Baltimore riots are starting to remind me of is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee.
Great book.
Yes, fantastic book. A riveting story about the coming of age and racism
Truly
in
engrossing.
American society. Grabs onto me. But this injustice in the criminal justice organization, that's the word, it's mind-blowing because this trial scene in To Kill a Mockingbird it reminds me a lot of the situations in Baltimore, and To Kill a Mockingbird takes place so long ago, and like, what does it say about our society that it's like situations that happened in racist South America tons of years ago, like these events are still happening like today. Like Baltimore was 2015.
Yeah.
So, like, I know that during this whole project, I focused a lot on, like, the history of, like, progressivism and these social movements towards equality and racism. And To Kill a Mockingbird really, like, helps show a good example of that just because of how long ago it was and how Tom Robinson was just not given a fair trial whatsoever, even though there was evidence proving that he was innocent. And that kind of thing happened all the time, like, back as long ago as the Civil War, when that whole war basically was over the freedom of slavery, and it was just, we still see effects of that today. And one quote that I saw on an article on Encyclopedia Britannica about progressivism that I absolutely loved was that social reformers on American democracy were trying to strengthen the sphere of reforms, and that they were on a mission to make we the people the whole people, which is so important because so many people don't realize that if you go back and look at the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, it talks about everyone being equal, and that's the basis of America, and that's what we were founded on. And today we just neglect that and don't even remember that these are our roots. Like, this is what we were born on. And
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's very clear that the world is messed up. More specifically, we're talking about America. That these events, like, basically, if you ask people on the streets, do you think that racism and sexism and homophobia is still a major problem? Like, people would say, no, that's gone away. That was problems of our grandparents and our great-grandparents. They fought for that. They won. It's over.
Yeah.
But in light of all these events, is it really safe to say that it's over? And how can we possibly think about actually making it over?
it's absolutely not over.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things we can do as like a younger generation and older generations can do is we should start teaching like children, like younger children, to be more accepting, to love people more. That this whole air of hate it's not okay, and it's like we should move away from it because this is our past. This is going back on history. People like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they fought for this. They rallied for this. And why should they die in vain for a cause that wasn't fixed?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You're saying we should educate children in school, correct?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was thinking something along the same lines, too, because all of us have had a formal education in very good schools, and how much of that education is about acceptance and love once you get past, let's say, 6th grade?
I'd say it's like a lot less about acceptance and love and more about the fact that there was a lack of it. Because in a lot of history we learn about the different, like the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement and progressivism, but we don't really learn how we can incorporate that into today.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because if you ask any history teacher, why do we learn history, they would say because it's important that we don't repeat history.
Exactly.
Because history repeats itself, and they'll say it's important that we don't repeat history, so they educate us about these problems, but they don't tell us how to keep it from happening again, and that's up to us to decide.
They just tell us what went wrong, and I don't even think they specify. I mean, we talk about all these racial things, but they never specify on what we need to change. And even from personal experience, I could remember being brought up and not accepting someone who didn't believe in God. I was surprised when one of my friends said they didn't believe in God, and I didn't understand it, and until later.
How old were you?
I was actually with you, Ryan. In elementary school, it was, I want to say...
Like 9 years old, even.
Yeah.
At that point, we hadn't had enough formal education on acceptance of all these
which is
beliefs.
surprising. So I honestly think that I was talking about that earlier, where
Ooh, we are running low on time.
yeah, I was talking about that earlier where we need to bring up kids better. So yeah, good point, Hasib.
Yeah.
So I think it's high time we wrap this up, and I want to leave the listeners here with a challenge. So, to the listeners with children, make sure you educate them not only on the problems of the past, but how to keep from repeating them. And to everyone, be accepting and loving of each other.
Change yourself.
Yeah.
And also,
Yes, go ahead.
Also, one thing that I've tried to do, and I think it's important for everyone to do, is that if you're just out and about and you see somebody do something that you might not agree with, and you have a thought in your head that's very negative or condescending, try and catch yourself and correct yourself, because if you become aware of the fact that you're being like negative towards, say, a different race, then that's the only way for you to like start to fix it. Because,
And another takeaway is to really look below the surface of these issues, like I said, with feminism. And even in Baltimore, there was a lot of speculation in the beginning. People thought that there were riots for no reason, people were overreacting. So it really takes time to get deep into these problems to really realize what's actually there. So take time to really look at it before you start saying things that you might regret later.
Also, if you see people doing this, like if you see people being racist or hating, try to educate them yourselves. Try to stop them. Try to be like, yo, that ain't alright, fam.
Yeah.
Yeah, change yourself.
Yeah. Don't just point out how they're wrong. Actually try to teach them like you're teaching a young child.
Explain them what's wrong.
Because a lot of times they are just aren't educated, just like a young child. They just honestly don't know what is better. So.
Alright, this has been GRAYBELLSEEBAN Podcast Episode 1. Tune in next week for a podcast about the Civil War, and we'll see you next week. Good night, America.
Night.
Night.
Night. Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Sweet dreams.